Good afternoon to one and all. I am Akanksha Singh. Let me start by expressing my gratitude to everyone for joining and adorning this platform with your presence. Amity University, Greater Noida, and Atulyam campus. Delighted to see you all at yet another session of the series Authors Talk organized by Book Club Central Library. The main motive behind this author talk series is to inculcate the reading habits among each one of us. Thanks to the vision of our Honorable Founder President Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, a man grounded to his dream, he has always believed in the policy of leaning one eye on vision and one eye on implementation. A man of mission who follows the four E's: edge, enthusiasm, excellence, and execution in all walk of life. Our Honorable Chancellor Dr. Atul Chauhan needs special appreciation for his inspiring words. King always does equal justice to all. We are not 100% perfect, but our efforts should be towards the perfection. Let me inform all the participants that we are also going live from our Amity University Facebook social media handle named AUGCNCL. Goddess Saraswati is an embodiment of wisdom, knowledge, and learning. Let's seek her blessings in all spheres of life. May I request our presenter, Dr. Rohtash Singh, to please play the prayer.
या कुन्देन्दुतुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा शुक्लां ब्रह्मविचारसारपरमा आद्यां जगद्व्यापिनीं वीणापुस्तकधारिणीम् अभयदां जाड्यान्धकारापहा हस्ते स्फाटिकमालिकां विदधतीं पद्मासने संस्थितां वन्दे तां परमेश्वरीं भगवतीं बुद्धिप्रदां शारदाम्।
Thank you, sir. Now I would request Dr. Rohtash Singh to please brief us about Book Club.
Thank you, Professor Akanksha. After the kind blessings of Ma Saraswati, it is the time to have at a glance about our book club. Let me share the screen again. Our book club, which was basically established on 22nd October 2021, still yet 14 authors and 18 guest speakers has been participated and graced the book club. For the same, 10 author talks has been conducted till yet. Our book club is to building the treasure trove, inculcation of reading habit, developing book lovers community, developing curiosity either by reading or by listening. If you're having the knowledge either by reading or listening, I think both are same. Means the wisdom has to be separate, segregated, or communicated. One more initiative is concerned to author and reader intellect exchange. Let we have at a glance these authors and guests have participated in the book club and Chris the occasion as well. These were the books which were the part of our book club. And the recent was Unstoppable by Manthan Shah. And now you all are welcome in this 11th author talk in the series. And the first author talk as the dual talk by Professor Dr. Arun Kumar Vasishtha ji and Ma'am Katrina. You're most welcome. Over to you, Professor Akanksha, please. Thank you.
Many congratulations to you and to your team, sir. Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, Greater Noida, and Atulyam campus of Amity Education Group is shining under the leadership of our Director General, Professor Dr. Ajay Rana. He has been with Amity Education Group for more than 22 years, working in different capacities as Senior Vice President, Director, Professor, and much more. He has also served Shobit University, Meerut in the capacity of Vice Chancellor. He is an educationalist, a teacher, an innovator, a strategist, and a committed philanthropist. He has been honored with more than 250 awards and recognition for his extraordinary work in the field of education and research. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Akanksha. I'm audible?
Yes, sir, you're quite audible.
Thank you, Professor Akanksha, and honorable guest of the day, Chief Guest Shri Rajiv Nethani ji, the guest Jayant Bhatt Sahab, the two authors. Again, it's my honor to interact again virtually by Katrina ma'am and Professor Arun Kumar Vasishtha ji. On behalf of our honorable founder president Dr. Ashok Chauhan, on behalf of our president Dr. Atul Chauhan, and on behalf of the entire faculty members, the fraternity Amity family, we welcome you on the forum, sir. It's our honor, Professor Arun Kumar ji, that you have received the many invitations from across the world. And I know how Madam Katrina was busy with a lot of assignments that my personal interaction with her last month in my campus. When I read about the book title, Secrets of Sustainable Leadership. And here I share one thing from this platform, that the secret with respect to leaders always persuasions. And that's the event, that the quality by Professor Smita Sharma. When there's only one interaction with our esteemed guest of the day, Madam Katrina, they interacted on the one time. And I passed that instruction to Professor Smita to invite ma'am for the author's talk. And second, about the Bhishma Pitamaha, Arunji, that I go through about the summary of your book. There's no single person on the earth that about the patience. Whatever patience you have and what type of leadership quality you have, without Bhishma Pitamaha, there is no Mahabharata and there is no Shrishti with respect to that we are live in our Kali Yuga. Professor Arun Kumar ji, when I go through your book, I realize that this is the basic summary. Means the Bhishma Pitamaha is nothing but the means in the today's scenario, how we inculcate all these qualities in our day-to-day life. Sacrifice, commitment, and always think that what is the good or bad, but always do your duties. There's nothing good or bad in this life. But that is a thinking that if you belong to India, that you are always be honest towards the Indian citizens and our country. And if you are in US or if you are in the Pakistan, then your duties and responsibilities towards that country only. So from this platform, I hope that the future leaders from our country, Mother India, as well as the Mother Earth, we will find some good authors. Like Professor Rohtas said, the vision of that talk, the book club's author talk, means reading habits, to improve the reading habits of the books, or listening the authors, but in addition to that, to follow the footprints of that author, to become more authors from our university, for more future leaders from our university. We are so blessed that two eminent persons or the authors on the forum. We are our chief guest, Shri Rajiv Nethani ji, who is a very topmost person in the info game, and Shri Jain Bhatt. Now up to the all listeners, those who are present here, please follow the footprints by these leaders, these stalwarts, with respect to IT industry or with respect to the social or international.
I think so there's a network issue at Sir's end.
No issues. Professor Akanksha, please call our today's chief guest, please.
Sure, sir. We are greatly honored and extremely delighted to have our chief guest of this evening, Rajiv Nethani, EVP and Chief People Officer, Infogate, a young, dynamic, and a fast tracker HR and OD thought leader who believes in self being the instrument of change. Having worked with high-tech industry...
Akanksha, I'm so sorry. There is some internet, there's a problem from my side. I'm so sorry.
No issues.
Conclude my words. So Rajiv ji, I need your permission if you're okay with me.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So Rajiv ji, I'm so sorry that I interrupt you in between. So, but whenever this Dr. Rohtas Chiranjila approached to my office, I promised them that I will plan to visit my central library. But they are so smart, they convinced me on the forum. They said, okay, sir, we will arrange a new talk. We will invite the new leaders. And that is the first time that after 21 years with the education industry, I find such type of leaders, such type of committed person, Dr. Rohtas Singh and Dr. Chiranjila. Professor Akanksha and Chilki, you are always like the person go-getter. And those persons, those who are present here, I know directly or indirectly, Shri Rajiv Nethani is through LinkedIn or Infogame. Sometimes we have met, I think, physically as well in our campus. But sir, on this entire family, I thank to you. I request to all those who are present here, please, from this forum, at least 5 to 10%, if these talks change your life, please try to understand. Please try to think how to that you become the leader or the authors for our Mother Earth Order. With this, my compliment to my team, my compliment to my professors, and again, thank you all, the esteemed guests, those who are present here. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir, for those inspiring and enriching words. Once again, I invite my chief guest of this evening, Rajiv Nethani, EVP and Chief People Officer, Infogame, a young, dynamic, and a fast tracker, HR and OD thought leader who believes in self being the instrument of change. Having worked with high-tech industry throughout in his career, he has played a key role in transformational journey of Infogame, the Salt System, Global Logic, and HCL. In his current role at Infogame, which is a human-centered digital platform and a software engineering company headquartered at Los Gatos, California. Mr. Rajiv served as a board of trustee with Pauri Galwar Trust, which focuses on development of underprivileged people in Uttarakhand state in India. We welcome you, sir. Please share some words of wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you, Professor Akanksha. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. First of all, I must admit that this is something which is very unique experience for me to participate in. All this while, all such forums where I would have participated would either be related to having a conversation or dialogue with academic, in academic context, or maybe in the industry panel discussions. But participating in an author or a book club kind of concept is something which is very different experience for me. And that's where when Chiranjeev Lalji actually reached out to me, and I was wondering, what do I need to actually do with this forum? What do I need to speak? Because it's something which is very different and unique context in which I'll be getting into. And then he said, you have a free space in terms of whatever you would like to share with the participants. And largely the participants come from the academic world. These are the young minds. And then I thought, maybe in this forum, it would not be an appropriate context to talk about what will enable the journey in a corporate world. How do we look at leadership, management, industry context, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about something which is about this forum itself, right? And that's where I got into some reflection because I personally believe in a learning. I'm a lifelong learner. My education has never stopped. Even when I'm speaking to you, I'm pursuing my MSc in People and Organization Development from University of Sussex in UK. And I personally believe that education is very essential and learning is furthermore essential. And learning is something which doesn't need an age. Every time, every stage, we are learning something new. That could be learning from on the job. That could be learning from the experiences, interacting with different people, working with co-workers, managers, leaders, and also pursuing something that the pursuit could be in the space of picking a book and reading that book. And what I have reflected is when I look at my learning, which has come from different books, some of those books have left a deep impact in me. And I thought I'll actually pick one book and share my learning context from that book. And it's actually a Seagull Livingstone, which was written by Richard. It's a pretty old book now. I'm sure people who come from 80s and 90s would have picked this book at some stage and would have gone through it. It's still a very popular book. But the storyline is something which is very inspiring. And if you have not read this book, I could give you a little summary about it. So this book is all about seagulls. And so before I talk about the storyline, the context is seagull as a community live in flock. Say they don't like to live outside of flock. If anybody, and there are customary norms and rules which they have created for this community. And if any of the seagull does not follow that, they outcast that seagull from the flock. So that's a storyline and the context in which there's a baby seagull. His name is Jonathan. And it's basically a novel book. It's a very nice read. If you pick it, you'll love reading it. And this baby Jonathan is someone who doesn't want to get limited basis of customary norms and basis these rules of the flock. And it would like to challenge them. It would like to actually sometimes fly higher than the defined space for the flock to fly. And his parents would always kind of reprimand him or would always tell him that this is not acceptable. As a child, there was a lot of flexibility which was given to him in terms of not reprimanding or punishing him from outcasting from the flock perspective. But gradually, Jonathan didn't change. Jonathan remained who he was. And at one fine day, the community of the flock decided, or whosoever was the decision maker of the flock decided that we'll have to outcast this seagull. And despite of that change and that despite of that rejection from the community, Jonathan took that as an opportunity and actually pursued the passion and soared higher and higher in the sky, which none of the seagulls had ever imagined. And that storyline talks about in terms of how that entire thing unveiled, and there's an element. So actually what this book tells you from my lens point of view are two things. One is, what I've seen is generally what happens is we are always in a rat race, right? When we look at our life, when we come out of academic institutions, we get into corporates, we see that, okay, what are the paths and streams within the organization from a skill perspective people are pursuing? Should we pursue the same? If somebody is doing AI, ML learning journey, should we follow AI, ML learning journey? If somebody is doing Java, should we follow Java? Or if somebody is actually into design, should we just follow design? There's a rat race always. We're always going with the pattern, without even realizing that possibly our strength lies somewhere else. And how do we leverage that strength for the larger benefit of our own self? Because ultimately, it is a fact that, and this is coming from Gallup. Gallup has this instrument called Strengths Finder. And the baselining of that concept is, or that framework is, as a human being, we can always leverage on our strengths better than our improvement areas or weaknesses. Most of the times, our elders, our teachers, our managers tell us that you need to focus on your improvement area. Understood. But the fact of the matter is, if you focus on your improvement area and if you put 80% efforts, the outcome would be only 10% or 20% maximum, because that requires you to go beyond the limited boundaries or stretch boundaries and put in a lot of efforts. Whereas if you really put 20% efforts on your strengths, the impact would be 80%. So how do you leverage your strengths to work on your improvement areas should be the focus, but nobody tells us that. And that's very essential part in our life, where we should always look at what our strengths are and how do we actually, instead of downplaying them, how do you leverage them and see that where do we get happiness? At the end, it's all about peace and happiness. Instead of following the rat race, can we actually pursue our strengths to remain happy? And it is, and instead of following everyone, whatever they're doing, it's our life actually. We have the freedom to live it the way we see it fit for us. But at the same time, it should not mean that starting tomorrow, we will start challenging everything. We'll say, okay, all these customary norms, whatever everybody is doing is not making sense. The biggest underlining thing of that is you need to actually hold the conviction about the change. You need to have that vision very clearly articulated in your mind, because that will actually drive you to pursue that change. Instead of making obstacles for the purpose of creating a change will always be ineffective. So do you hold credibility and integrity? That is very essential for any path of surpassing one's limits. So that's one dimension which is a takeaway from this book. The second dimension, and I'll quickly go over that and then leave it for others to actually chime in from a session perspective. The other one is, it's more about a spiritual knowledge, which I personally believe is what author described in this book is that what is the purpose of our life? The purpose of a seagull's life is to fly and soar deep in the sky. Similarly, the purpose of our life is something which is very personal, but yet very common. At the end, all of us want to be, as I was mentioning earlier, we want to be at peace, we want to be happy. So the question is, are we living that? And it doesn't need any rocket science kind of perspective to experience that. It's all about how do we internalize what is happening inside us. The fact of the matter is, we can't change what happens in outside world. We can't change what people do. We can't control them, but what we control is our reactions and responses. Something which has happened has happened. Sometimes I tell our managers that you may have a difficult situations with your customers, for example, and you may have a time estimation challenges because of which you are now struggling to deliver a release. Now that's a situation. Now that situation is like a pressure. And as we learned in physics, the formula of stress is pressure divided by resilience. And resilience is inside us. So how do we create that resilience which is strong enough to deal with any kind of pressure situation which is happening outside, and remain at calm and peace and deal with the situations with much more courage, and also with a lot of joy of doing things which we need to deal with. And in this case, the seagull flew for the joy of it, while other seagulls actually flew to find the food. That's where the difference was. And the purpose is not the food. That's a means to survive. But the purpose for the seagull is to fly, fly, and fly, right? And that's what Jonathan did. And that's a good reflection for us as an individual, that how do we actually live our purpose? So these are the two major findings from this book, which I found, and it keeps inspiring me every time. And I thought today, while I address this August group, I must share these learnings with all of you. So with this, thank you, Akanksha, for having me here. I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv ji, for
Thank
your
you.
inspiring words. It was, as great as always, hearing from you. And we hope you that, you will continue coming to our, book club and sharing your thoughts, in the near future too. So before I hand over this mic to, Professor Silky Sharma, I would request, Sita Madam, to please say a few words about the, our Sweden, the author from who has, joined all the way from Sweden. Please say a few words from her, about her also. Over to you,
Thank
madam.
you, sir. Good evening, everyone. On the behalf of Amity University and Atulyam campus, I would like our esteemed guest, Katrina ma'am, to today's author session. I remember when we met last month for your book promotion in our campus, your beautiful persona and immense wisdom created a professional and personal connection with our Amity universe. So again, I feel very proud and honored to invite you again, and we are very grateful that you could manage some time from your busy schedule. And ma'am, please enlighten us with all the knowledge on quality management and leadership to all our students and faculty members. Thank you so much. We welcome ma'am.
Thank you, madam. So I would like, Professor Silky Sharma, madam, to please go ahead and take the session further.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chiranjit Lalji. And after a wonderful session by Mr. Rajiv Nethani, wherein he shared wonderful learnings with all of us, now I would like to introduce you all to our first author of the day, Ms. Katrina Malmrot, who is the author of Secrets of Sustainable Leadership. Ma'am is Master in Quality Management and Leadership Development. And she is a holder of a new number of other degrees as well. She worked a lot as a project leader, learning and development, regarding OD, staff development, and leadership development of management groups, quality management, conflict and crisis management, coaching, and a number of areas. She is pedagogic, responsive, possibility-oriented, caring, and flexible communicator. The last 17 years, she has served in a number of areas in the management, education, and had been an officer in the Swedish Armed Forces as well. She worked with development and leadership processes, and she liked to work with OD and managers, union works, operation, conflicts and crisis, and all this is to pursue the best organizational structure for both the organization and as well as the people who work here. And it's her quality. She loves meeting people, help them, and take the organizations forward. And that's very well visible, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining all the way from Sweden, and thanks to the technological platforms. At Sweden, it is close to 12:30, I think midday in the noon, and here in India, we are at 4 p.m., ma'am. So we welcome you at Amity University and Atulyam campus. Over to you, ma'am, please.
No, hopefully you can hear me. Thank you very much.
Welcome you on the forum, Katrina ji, again. Welcome, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I have wrote this book because I have been reflecting a lot, because I've been working with leadership, and I have been working with quality management and also health in my background. And during this pandemic, I started to think about this problem with the health and other things, and especially, and then I decided, okay, time to write a book. I have never done it before. So, and I was also in the mood that I was going to use Edward Deming's 14 points when I wrote my book. So that's why the people who read it can see that every chapter, almost not from the beginning and not the last chapter, is about his bullets. So from the beginning here, I will talk a little bit about leadership, that I think the only way about the central part of leadership is the ones who is about, you can talk about that leadership is a process, that leadership involves goal accomplishment, but also that leadership occurs within a group context, and leadership involves influence. And also this about leadership, I am a certified facilitator also from the Swedish Defense University. So I have been working in that field also and having courses for civilians and for military officers about it. And here now the light is going down in this classroom. So hopefully, or I have to go with that because I'm sitting down. So it is about electricity, about the sustainable feeds also. So also about leadership. You can also think about these three famous monkeys, you know, the one who don't hear, the one who don't see, and also keep your mouth. And how we behave. And also, like I have been written in my book, I talk about a little bit my background, because I am Swedish, I am born in Sweden, I am grown up in Sweden, and I am also in the field that the Swedish leadership is the most common for me. And you can see if you look upon leadership around the world, it's a little bit different. And also we are a global world today. The culture is a little bit different and it can be clashes. So I will just say some part of the Swedish leadership for you. So hopefully you agree with me, or hopefully sometimes people don't agree with me. So then we can have a discussion about it later on. But you can say that Swedish leadership or leadership style is a leadership style applied in Sweden that is characterized by equality, participation, consensus, conflict avoidance, openness, independent and responsible employees, and time-consuming answering processes. And if you look upon the Swedish leader, you can say that they are characterized as friendly, cooperative, responsible, reliable, team integrating, and democratic. Most of them are democratic leaders. And there is both a strong individualistic and collectivist feeling within the Swedish leadership style, where everything should be just right. But also the Swedish leader is also characterized by caring for its subordinates and by putting a lot of focus on personal development, which means that employees can take responsibility and be involved and decide. However, it is also important to point out that there are large differences within Sweden as well. And not every leader is in that way. Someone is better, someone is not so good. But the Swedish decision-making model is those based on trying to involve those who are really familiar with the problems in the consensus process, which means that decision-making can be perceived as unclear and protracted also. And you also talk about the four cornerstones in the Swedish leadership styles. And you go back to it. The first one is typical for all Nordic countries here in the Scandinavia, and it's called gender equality. This means that everyone is equally valuable in a decision-making process. It's not in that way in all countries, I know, around the world. But the second is participation, and means that everyone should participate in decision-making. Everyone has the right to participate in decision and decision-making, which creates independent employees, and also that they can understand decision in another way, because it is democratic. Because before you have this decision-making, if you have it like a process, if you involve the employees, you also can get influences from them saying, okay, you're talking about how this decision, have you thought about this angle, for example? And then sometimes, no, I don't know anything about it. Then you interview that employee and then, okay, maybe the lamp is yellow then. And okay, you involve that also because it's will be maybe more efficiency. And consensus is the third and most typical cornerstones of Swedish leadership. A decision is made only when everyone is heard. And after that, everyone involved does what they have decided. So before you take the decision, you can wave your hands and you can talk it and you can discuss it. But also when the decision is taken, most people follow that decision and they're not demonstrating against it. Because if you do that, then you can think about, okay, should I stay at this place, this organization or company, or shall I apply for another work in another place? And the fourth cornerstone of the Swedish leadership style is conflict avoidance. So you can understand what's happening when they try to avoid conflicts. Sometimes it's good. So they know also about if you do the decision making in the right way, then it will not be any big issues with conflicts. So also think about that leadership in Sweden, this cornerstones model. Also, if you do it in a good way, you work with the processes, you create conditions for participating, you base your decisions on facts, not about what people think, and constantly work on improvements, and you have a committed leadership. And when you talk about the customers, think about put the customers in the corner too. So not only like the four cornerstones model, you have the customers also to think about. And you all often talk about icebergs, not the Titanic, but you can talk about iceberg and you can compare culture like an iceberg that you only see 1/10 of it above the water and the rest is invisible. So when you talk about, for example, in the culture in organizations, because I've been working with people in this field also, we talk about the, or for example, if you ask a person like a Swedish one about the word future, a lot of people, oh, what I am going to do in the future, I will be retired, or I will do work with this. If you ask youngsters or students or what they want to do. And if you ask a Japanese, for example, or if you ask an Indian people, a lot of Indian people, when you ask these questions, they talk about karma. So it is interesting how you think about future in different culture and the countries around the world, because it is about how you're grown up, your family, your values, everything like that. And like I also have, like I told you about in my book, it was about, I have used Edward Deming's 14 points. And he also talked about like too much focus on short-term profitability requirements poses major problems later. So try to think ahead, try to think long terms, but you have to take it down in smaller steps. You have the goal long ahead, like your strategy, your visions, your goals, but you maybe have small goals like climbing on the stairs that take small steps to get there. And I will not go through all his 14 points. That is not my subject today, but it's very interesting to think about it, and also about, like when you talk about the quality management field, about his, you can see the PDCA wheel or the PDSA wheel, to think about this transformation. And PDCA or PDSA, it's about plan, do, check, act, or plan, do, study, act, and how you work with the improvements. The improvement processes and like leadership processes, helping choose different, and also then you come to think about the goal, like increased customer satisfaction with lower resource consumption, like TQM, total quality management. And what are you talking about then? Then we're coming back to the values. And what are the values then? Have you thought about that? And also the students, do they think about the values? And then we come back to, for example, put the customers in the corner again. We talk about base decisions on facts. We talk about work with processes. We talk about constantly work or improvements. On improvements, we talk about the committed leadership. And we talk about create conditions for participation. And what kind of tools do we have for doing these things? We have like a lot of diagrams, like relation diagrams. We have tree diagrams. We have Ishikawa diagrams, like I love to work with. And also during this last semester in school, in the spring with my students, I have in leadership, and then they were going to work. They got the reflection issues to work with a couple of weeks, like a project. They're sitting about 4 students in one group and the other ones. And one group, because they looked upon the goals for the course, and they had to decide if there were any goals they had missed and we still haven't worked with. And one group talked about the culture in organizations. They thought they didn't know so much about it. So, and then I hear the students. They were sitting and talking about metacognition, like about learning. So I was sitting, looking upon, listen to my students. When I went from that lecture, I have a big smile in my face, and I started to talk about with my colleagues about, do you know what my students was talking about? It was like, it was fantastic. And the best thing, they didn't know what they were talking about. So when I talked about to get them their feedback back the lecture after, and I told them and the rest of the class, it was amazing to have this discussing. Okay, and also about other kinds of tools. That it can be process maps, it can be control charts, but also like Pareto diagrams, relationships charts, for example. And then we have another thing to talk about. It is also, what about the working? We talk about benchmarking or using, we have the procedures, we have Six Sigma, for example, with other like the green belts, black belts, and so on. We have self-evaluations, we have the goal changing, we have supplier interactions, we have cross-functional groups. You have to talk about with the people on the other side, for example, so you understand each other, the communication then. And you also have the customer-centric planning. And that is also very interesting. So how can we involve the other people in the organization? It's very interesting. And it's also very important that the people who are working in the organization or the company knows a little bit about the other one in other departments also work with, because sometimes you are sitting in your room, you're sitting and working, and you think you need to discuss or have some chat with other people and maybe think about, I should have been talking to people in this kind of field, but how to find them. So sometimes like a coffee break with other ones in other departments, it can be a huge difference for a whole organization. They can fix new products in that field or new other things about what they're working with. So, but also discussing like improve the quality in our company, for example, and discussing cost decrease because of less rework, like fewer mistakes, fewer delays, and snacks like better use of machine time and materials, but also looking upon the productivity improvements and also capture the market with better quality and lower price in the end. Because people want good quality, and good quality instead of like a lot of quantity. And this is also very important for the companies, because if you have a good quality and low good price or low price, you stay in the business. And in the end, you provide jobs and more jobs, and you can develop more products or other things. So, and I also have in my book, like I told you about that I am Swede and I grew up in Sweden. And I have the values as a Swede, for example, Christian. And also, like I said, I am certified facilitators in leadership from the Swedish Defense University. And I have used 2 models in my book. I have used that, the Swedish Defense University leadership model, but also the US Army models have something to compare with in my book. And the Swedish leadership model, I think it's very interesting in 2 parts, especially. First, the professor who have one of the ones in charge of this one, he have researched even more about it. So the piece of it up in the right corner, now it is really researched and it is a developmental leadership if you are in that square. But also the other thing is the last part of the model, because it talks about leader and the context. And that is some part I haven't seen, you can say, in other models I have in studies. And for example, and I will just take some words from it, so maybe it's easier for people to understand who haven't read the book. Like leaders, it is about competence and skills. It is about the technical, it's about the managerial advances, social, and also the stress management. But it's also about individual factors like physical, like psychological, and also about outlook on life. And the context on the other side, it is about the environment, the society, the opening conditions. It's also about the organization, like the structure, the rules and policies, but also about like culture, processes, and power distributions, and also down to the groups, like team rules and the processes also in the groups. And also, like I am working a lot with both my students, like I coach my students, and some of my colleagues say, oh, I'm coaching them. I saw like from my own class, which I am mentoring, they are in the 1st grade in the high school last year. And I saw especially one boy, he was not so much sitting and working. He could staying up, go to his classmates and disturb them. And I started to talk to him and get him feedback about it. And he started to go down, sitting down, and you can see his grades going up like this. He got a straight A in Spanish language, for example, and other subjects, it was really good to see him. So it's very important so that you try to coach them, coach your colleagues or your employees, for example. And feedback is a very good instrument of working tools, I think, about it. And also thinking about, as a leader, the future strategy, because people moving around in the world today, it's not like people in the Scandinavian countries, like Norwegian people moving to Sweden or Finnish people. We have people coming from the whole world, like also the war in Ukraine have put a lot of immigrants from Ukraine coming. And hopefully the war is over very fast so they can go back home again. And this is with different culture. And I am very curious. I've always been, so I want to meet new people. What about their culture, their values? I mean, I was working at Swedish Armed Forces International Center. It's very interesting to meet like military officers, police officers, and civilians from the whole world coming for UN courses I had. So because I learned a lot about it, I get more knowledge about other persons and other cultures, and also a network. So I can email and have a chat with people from the other side of the earth. And that is also if I have some questions. But also we are working different globally, and also think about its risk for conflicts, because how do we communicate? It can be like I can say like, oh, but I have said it 10 times to you. And the people, the ones are talking, no, you haven't. I haven't heard it, but I have said it 10 times, because it depends on how we communicate. But also we have the differences. What about equality? Male, female, because we're also different. We are thinking in different ways. And also like the chiefs, like the CEO in one place can be like, I have one chief once, he was like management by walking. Every morning he came to his office, he walked through the corridor and said like, hello, Nisse, hello, Peter, hello, Katarina, and hello, good morning. And then she saw, okay, is you healthy or not? Or did you have a cold or whatever? And it was some issues, could talk about it directly, or if I had some issues, I could take it up directly and hopefully get the answer at the same time. And also, it is about working together towards the goals. Like we can talk about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, how we can work together, different countries, different regions, for example. I was very impressed when I went to Delhi during the summer and saw how you are working with these issues, because I didn't think that you are working so good with it. And when I came back to Stockholm, I have told my students, my colleagues, my friends, that it was so clean in Delhi comparing with Stockholm, that I've said for several years that Stockholm is getting more and more dirty because people just drop the things they have in their hands instead of going to the trash. So somebody else is going to pick it up. And it's usually
very true, Ms. Katrina. And we really value the Sweden culture, all the people, their leadership style. I am also a faculty of cross-cultural management, and it is very interesting to teach the students of management about the Swedish management style as well. And wherein I have always, been fascinated by the management style of Sweden, that all the work has value over there. And the employees who come to work wanting to do a good job. So managers there, they see themselves as a coach rather than an autocratic rule maker, and they guide their subordinates and pride themselves on being very good listeners. So we appreciate all the qualities that Swedish management has to teach to the world. And thank you so much for your wonderful session.
Can I just add two things?
Sure, please.
And that is what we are doing in Sweden. I don't know if you're doing it in India, but when you're working here in Sweden, the employees have at least once a year talk with the chief. And then also I usually say, what do you know about your employees? Because your employees can be the solution for your business if you have some trouble with your business or company. And like I said a little bit before, that many employees are loyal to the manager and the chief, and how will you deal with it? As like you have, do you have employee interviews? Because they can be the solution that this company will be very good in the business instead of going down in like bankruptcy. And it's also another thing to think about, like I just wanted to say something about health also. Like we know that WHO has said that year 2030, illness like mental illness will be the biggest disease in the world. And we have to try to get it done. And that is also, I take it up in my book, because how can we get rid of this kind of illness, like people get exhausted, or somebody we talk about before that, smashing into a wall, and I have been there by myself also. So how can we deal with it so people don't get it? Like a lot of youngsters, a lot of more and more people get depressed, for example. We have to get rid of it, because if we can't have it, like more and more people get sick in that kind of ways. We have to try to cut it down, and how will we do it? So that is one thing. And I know I work with some tools that I know that people put up a mask when they're working, for example. You can do it like I usually say when I have courses in this, like, okay, it will be Christmas, you're meeting your parents-in-law. Okay, you can meet them, for example, on Christmas Day, but you can't do it like 7 days a week because you're not working too good with each other, and they will take the energy from you. So in the end, you will like drop and you will get sick. Okay, sometimes it goes very well, but you have to think of, and it is the same at where you work. If you don't feel well at your work, try to stop the working there and go to another place, which will suit you much better, so you don't will get sick. So thank you very much. That was I wanted to add.
Thank you so much for the wonderful session, Katrina ma'am. It's wonderful to listen to the style of management and leadership from a very beautiful country, I must say, Sweden. Thank you so much, ma'am.
And thank you that I could participate and you wanted me to participate also.
No, we are
So
thankful.
I am in a
Thank
rush.
you.
I have a lecture starts in 7 minutes.
Sure.
I
I'll do
may
very
miss the rest, but I see that you are having it on YouTube. So maybe I can go back to YouTube later on and see the rest of the part. And
Yes, we would be sharing the link with you. Yes, Dr. Rohtas.
So have a nice day to you all. Thank you very
Good
much.
day. Yeah. Moving on to the
Thank
next
you.
author of the day, Professor Dr. Arun Kumar Vashisht ji, who is going to discuss with us on his new upcoming book, Hymns of Devvrat, the Rider of the Red Chariot. If I talk about the profile of Dr. Arun Kumar Vashisht ji, he is Secretary, India Chapter Teachers Division, International Council Juris, London. He's having an illustrious career as an officer in Indian Army for 32 years and the Dean of a law school in a university. Dr. Vashisht is also a PhD in law from Kurukshetra University and a renowned author and has authored 4 books earlier. The titles of the book are Tenure and Termination of Service, Mind the Wonderful Wizard, India-China Relations, and Blossoms of the 50th Winter, a Ballad on the Constitution. So now he has composed the Bhagavad Gita in English rhyme for English-speaking readers in India and abroad. So please, sir, over to you.
Okay, all right. May I start my speech?
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Silky Sharma. First of all, because since you are introducing me to this forum, you have done it earlier also, and I'm very grateful to you. And that was the 26th of November, the last year. You celebrated the Constitution Day by the release of my earlier book, Blossoms of the 50th Winter.
Exactly.
And before I put on record my thanks to the high and the great present on this on page, and those who have not physically present, but by virtue of their personality and their aura, they are present here. Before I do that, I must share a part of the information with you that after the release of this book by the mention of this book on this forum, within about a month's time, a Blossoms fan club was formed in Delhi, and there are fans of that book, Blossoms of the 50th Winter, which was released on this forum by the team of AMITI. And you were instrumental, of course, because you're the first one to mention about that book. Thank you so very much. I start my words by my submissions, rather, because the dais is decorated by the high personalities. So I would rather put my submissions. So I open my submission by paying my regards to Shri Ashok Chauhan ji, who is the founder of this great movement called the AMITI group of universities. Atul Chauhan ji and the guests of honor here, Shri Nathani ji, Shri Bhatt ji. I've heard Nathani ji. He speaks so well. He's so articulate. Obviously, the young mind, the very sharp mind at that. And then a very grateful thanks to the doctor from Sweden, Professor Katarina. She spoke so well and so eloquently. The modern trends of management and certain secret keys to improve management as a subject and as a discipline. Very nice. Thanks to you, ma'am, for the wisdom that you shared on this dais, and I got benefited throughout. Then the Vice Chancellor of the Amity University, then Rana sir, Dr. Rana, for having spoken good words about us. And then my very good friends, Dr. Rohtas and Dr. Chiranji, my younger brother, and a friend, philosopher and guide. Though I have to play that role most of the time, but I feel he renders better advice than me. And for actually bringing me on this forum, Dr. Rohtasji, Dr. Chiranji, hi. So very grateful to you, both of you, the love and affection that you have for me. Professor Smitaji, Professor Akanksha. When I was informed by my friend, Dr. Chiranji, that we have selected your book, Hymns of Devrat, the Rider of the Red Chariot, for author talk, and that it has been clubbed with a discourse on the secrets of management. I was really at loss that how will I connect these books together? But well, I even consulted them, and I consulted some more personalities who I would love to name at the moment. And the one very, very venerable out of those is Major General retired Anand Bhanu Gorti ji. He settled in Secunderabad, and he was the Judge Advocate General of the Indian Army when I was commissioned as a second lieutenant. And he was one of the. I was lucky that he was the Judge Advocate General of the Indian Army who pipped me as a second lieutenant after my parents did, actually. So, and I have had the great honor of receiving his blessings even till date. I was his ADC also after about 2 years of my service. So that great relationship. And he's the one who had taken this book on Amazon, for the first person to have that book. And he shared with me when I went last month, when I went to Hyderabad and visited him to pay my regards. I, along with my wife, went there. We met General and Mrs. Gorti, General Gorti, who's decorated with Ati Vishis Seva Medal and Vishis Seva Medal. He showed me the book and brought it for my signatures. And what a privilege. And he said, I have kept it in my temple and I read it when I read the Vishnu Sahasranam. And that was such an emotional moment, which I'm sharing with you on this floor. I consulted him in the morning. I asked him, sir, what should I say? And he gave me certain very, very important keys. Then another very young friend of mine, Pradeep, he's a Lieutenant Colonel in the Indian Army, and he'll be commanding the National Cadet Corps Battalion very soon in Chhattisgarh. He's the one who's another young advisor to me. So they have given me some very important points about the book, that how this book has been useful to them and how will it be useful to the rest of the people. And there are many other, so I also at the beginning put my very respectful regards and my love and affection to my readers, because this book also has earned some good popularity, particularly in the south of this country. And yes, I may also share that the first 2 chapters of this book have been read over to the great Lord Swami Padmanabha Swami of Thiruvananthapuram, because this book actually is dedicated to Swami Padmanabha Thiruvananthapuram, and that also have been done by one very dear senior and a friend and elder brother, Major General C.S. Nair, who's retired, who's settled in, again, the Judge Advocate General of Indian Army. He read out these 2 first chapters for me at the auspicious place, the Padmanabha Swami Temple. So, by and large, since it is a compilation of, it's the first time which I felt that there was a requirement to put in English ballad the 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. So that's what I did. But we all know that this is the outcome of a dialogue between the 2 commanders in chief. The two, one, Commander-in-Chief Bhishma Pitamaha, who commanded the Kuru army in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and who fell to the arrows of Pandavas, Arjun, on the 10th day of the battle, which was an 18-day long battle. And the other commander-in-chief, who was the emperor, Yudhishthir, Maharaj Yudhishthir of Hastinapur. So it's a dialogue between two emperors, as a matter of fact. One, His Excellency, or the Mahamahim, Bhishma Pitamaha, who was lying on the arrows, bed of arrows, and the another Mahamahim, the emperor of Hastinapur, newly appointed, Maharaj Yudhishthir. So the book actually is divided into 4 parts. The first part is the story of Devavrat, the Bhishma. I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that Bhishma was actually named Devavrat by the then king of Hastinapur, Shantanu. It was his son. And is believed to have been born out of the holy river Ganges when she took human form. And that is why the another name which he had earned for himself was Gangeya, that is the son of the holy river Ganges. So the first part of this book contains the story of the Bhishma, the Devvrat. The second part talks about the visions of the divine Narayan and his 1,000 names, because he addresses affectionately, he addresses Lord Vishnu by the name of Narayan, which we all, those who are familiar with the Indian scriptures, know that this name was given affectionately to Vishnu by Narad Muni. He always goes reciting the name of Narayan in the complete universe, from a planet to planet, as we believe. Now, the part 3 is the Bhishma's journey, that is sun in the winter solstice and advent of Uttarayan. It is believed that Bhishma Pitamaha waited for 56 days on the tips of the arrows in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, because he was waiting for the auspicious hour to leave his physical body. And only he was blessed with this boon, and he could control the time of his departure. So his journey is described in part 3. And the fourth is the moment of silence and eternal peace. That is when Bhishma attained the eternal peace and became silent after giving a discourse. Now, when I talk about this, the 10th Parva of Mahabharata, which is also called the Anushasan Parva, as the name itself suggests, Anushasan means discipline. And when we talk about discipline, we definitely talk about an organization. It could be a state as an organization. It could be a company as an organization. It could be a service or a force of a union as an organization. And Anushasan Parva means a canto, a portion, or a book. Parva is a part. The whole Mahabharata is divided into 18 parvas. So 10th Parva, that is the 10th part of Mahabharata, deals with the discipline. And discipline is, I remember the names of one of the very senior generals when I was a young major. He would, when I met him in the first interview, he told me, do you know what is discipline? He says, discipline is like a spine. There is a spinal cord. That without discipline, we are just the crawling beings. The moment you get the discipline into yourself, it puts a spinal cord into your body, and you stand erect and you walk with your head high on your shoulders. So that is what. So Anushasan Parva obviously has to have those elements in it. And having obviously there was a requirement to carry out a study and to understand it from those who have read it. And of course, it is a wide variety of people who I have had the great opportunity of meeting and sitting in their gracious company, whether it were the professors of Indian mythology, or it were the professors of the Oriental philosophy or the Western philosophy, the professors of history and of theology, or it could be the saints, or it could be the Babas, that is the Manikins, or it could be the Fakirs, or it could be my very dear young professors and friends in the profession of law. All of them put together, they acquainted me with that how what should be the genre, what should be the tone and tenor of this book. So I owe a lot to the complete environment of academics to this. So this is not, I would show this book to you. Yeah. It's called Vashashtas. As a matter of fact, I have very grateful thanks to my publisher who actually used my name as a brand name. Probably he did it a little too early. I think he should have done it after about 10, 15 books written by me, but he did on the 4th book itself. And that too, after a great variety of having written books on law, on foreign affairs, like India-China relations, written my essays thereon. But well, I think all these are guided by providence. I never knew that I'll be reading this book at the forum of management. So it's called, so please read it in small letters because publisher probably was too enamored by the word Vasishta, so he wrote it big. So the name is The Hymns of Devvrat, the rider of the red chariot. Devvrat, as I told you, is Bhishma Pitamaha, is the hymns. Why I call it hymns? Because hymns generally have a great quality of rhyme and meter, right? It could be the hymns of the Jingle Bells, or it could be the Amazing Grace. They're all hymns, right? Because they have a very, very perfect, they have a perfect meter and rhyme. They start and end with a lot of meaning, and every word is pregnant with meaning. Similarly, hymns, as we say, the Gayatri. Gayatri is, as we call it, a crowning jewel of the Vedas and the Rig Veda, which Vishwamitra is believed to have created. So it's a hymn because you cannot add or subtract anything out of it. If you remove a small punctuation or a hyphen from there, you change the whole word and the text and the context of that. So that's why we call it hymns. So what Devavrat has said is hymns. And why hymns for him? Devavrat is not an ordinary man. I wish that everybody reads this book, not because I am the author, but because probably I believe that it is an inspired book. You cannot write this book by just sitting on a desk, take a pen and paper. I have tried it many times, I just could not. And it happened when it had to happen, right? That's why I say it's an inspired, right? If it doesn't come, it doesn't have to be. So it happens only when it comes. A little one word about the book, because you might be interested in finding out and knowing it, and which my friends have actually suggested to me that I must explain on the forum. The cover of this book, you must be wondering where is Devavrata and where are the hymns, because that's where is the red chariot. Let me tell you, if you see this, at the bottom you see the Ganges, because he's Gangeya. Next time when I bring out the next issue of this book, I will write down the details about it as well, about the cover. It's very important to know what is the relevance of this cover. This is the Ganga, and let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is actual picture of the river flowing out of glacier. It has been taken, and the cover has been designed by me and by my designer. So we ourselves collected this picture. So this is a picture of the Ganges flowing, right? And if you see, there's a tree on the left of the book, right? Now, what is this tree? You know, there is something known as Akshaya Vat. Akshaya Vat is a banyan tree which it doesn't get destroyed, right? So when this Bhishma Pitama also was narrating this to Yudhishthira, they wanted to have a witness who could stand testimony to what he has said to Yudhishthira many years after the Battle of Kurukshetra. So there was the banyan tree who was told. The people at that time could speak to the trees. Even today, people can speak to the trees. We do understand their language. At least they do, if we don't. And you would know that in a state, Manipur, there are people who, if they have to cut a tree, they don't cut it just like that. They call him, they use some harsh language to that tree, and the tree dries up. This fact is known. So they hear. So they told this Akshay Bhatt that, look, friend, please do stand testimony what we have spoken. And so this is the Akshay Bhatt along the Ganges, right, of Ganga. And the rising sun. Rising sun is an epitome of hope. You would find in all my books this, because my name, as you know, is Arun. Arun signifies, Arun means sun. And so this is the rising sun. This is a book which contains a promise of hope, of a new day, of a new life, and a new setup, right? And the blue sky, of course, you know, everything stands in the sky, the space. One more thing which I tell you is the reverse of the book. The reverse of the book has an impression of certain flowers. If you see it carefully when you buy this book, you definitely would take a look. These flowers, you know what are these? These are the Parijat flowers. Flowers from the Parijat tree. And Parijat tree is believed to be growing in the court of Indra. And Lord Krishna was approached by his wife Satyabhama that I will marry you only if the would-be wife, that if you can get me the Parijata tree from the heavens. And then Lord Krishna went to heavens and brought this tree Parijata. It has a common name as Harsingar here in India. In the north, it's known as Harsingar. But it's a beautiful flower. And if you have to collect those flowers, you go early morning around 4 o'clock, because after 4 o'clock, they'll not be available. They all shed like rain. People sometimes call it the weeping plant also, that it shed tears. No, they're not tears. Those are the flowers, Parijat. So you can collect them early. So this page, because it deals with the world of Vaishnavites, so that is why. That's right. I'll reserve space for the questions at the end. But certain things which I would tell you about this book, when we talk about management as a concept, you would remember all of you who have read management, that, you know, the classical example of IBM, that when the IBM was running into red, people thought IBM was going to close down. That one single man came into IBM, it turned it around, and IBM is what it's today, right? It came back, it regained all its own glory. So what is important? Important is the person who's running that establishment. If we remember the Buddha, if we remember the Gandhi, what do we remember? We remember not only the deeds that they have done, but the man who has done those deeds. So it's the man who behind those deeds which matters. And what is that man composed of? Besides those 5 elements, right? We know those: fire, earth, water, air, space, right? So when these 5 elements are combined, you know, there's something else which moves those elements. And that is and we also know the concept of gunas. You have the sattva, you have the rajas, you have the tamas. So whichever predominates a particular personality will direct what you are going to do. Whether you are a manager, you are a politician, you are an army man, or you are a professor, teacher, clerk, or anybody. No job is small. Everybody's job is small, right? Big. So therefore, the book enshrines not the spiritual element of it. But I'll read out certain portions, you will yourself be able to make out. Now, for instance, it starts with the question. Yudhishthir poses a question to the Yudhishthir, to Bhishma Pitamaha, lying on the bed of arrows, which he alone can answer. Why? Because from a professor of mathematics alone can ask a question related to maths. Right. Similarly, I just give you a big and a simple example. So he asks the first question, he says, Kim mekam devatam loke, kim vapekam parayanam, stunvanta kam kamarchanta prapnuyur manava shubham. It's translated in English. This is what? See, the emperor of Hastinapur, newly appointed emperor, he just doesn't know what to do, how to go about, because the empire of Hastinapur extends over all the 4 corners of the world. Whichever place we name, it was because all the countries had participated into Mahabharata, all the 4 continents. So this is the question which is coming from the emperor of Hastinapur. And look at this question. And pursuant to this question is what is written into the next chapter, 45 poems, which this book comprises. He says, who is the one and only Lord, the lone asylum and shelter, whose name should I recite, and who is so pious as is worthy of my accusation? Then the next, I'll only read the English part, though it says, Ko dharma sarv dharmana bhavataha paramo matha kim japan muchyate jantu janma sansar bandha. It says, which dharma is the one ultimate and supreme, whose remembrance is so pious as would release all fetters of birth, death, and rebirth. No, dharma is not religion. This book cannot be connected with religion. What Bhishma said is not religion. He told about duty. The bounden duty is what is called dharma. Right. That's why we always find, if you read the book, the Artha Shastra of Kautilya, you would find the repetition of words, dharmo rakshati rakshata. right? The protector of duty gets protected in turn, right? So dharma means the bounden duty, the ordained duty, like we say the Constitution of India. It gives out certain rights and certain privileges and certain duties. So those duties are dharma. Now, just a few lines, how it starts. The first poem, it says, this is what Bhishma is telling. Come hither, my friend. Sit and hear. I tell you of the destinations far, far away. There the lights don't reach. The darknesses are numb. The oceans are still. And the intermittent cataclysms are extinguished. That's the land of thousand Vishnus. So that is how it starts. So look, I'll take you to the worlds which you have not seen. Worlds only which I have seen. Because I have been through so much of experience, whether it was fighting a battle, managing the empire of Hastinapur, or whether it was dealing with the spiritual people, rishis and maharishis. Now he also tells, about what, how the earth was formed. And now remember this, when was Mahabharata written by Vedavyas? As the chronology says, it is almost what, 5,000 years ago, or maybe more. We just don't know, but could be, say, approximately. And that's the time when Bhishma is saying tender. Yes, true. So tender planet. He says, what a tender planet Earth is. Right? He's saying. No, well, it's an imagination of the poet. It's my imagination as well, how I am looking at it. And I would remind you, many of you would know the NASA, the astronaut, Kalpana Chawla. When she went up, when she was asked to speak, what did she say? She says, oh, I find Earth as such a tender planet. Please do look after it. These were the words which she spoke. So it is definitely a tender planet, right? And this is what Bhishma says. The tender planet is the fourth poem. It says, life, wow, the prana of immortality, the tremors of infinity, the life it is Dharmaraj. He's addressing it to Yudhishthira. So I hear the chirp of invisible birds. He can't see those birds, but he hears the chirps. The souls to be born, swarmed in the firmament, whispering and looking for the wombs. So there will be life as it was to be. Right? So these are certain things where an ordinary person cannot go, but an emperor has to know. A person who's the leader, who's leading the multitudes of people and leaders, who's the leader of leaders, has to know this. Now, when is he saying this? Now, for instance, we are talking about a narration which has been given by a person who's lying on a bed of arrows. Now, the bed of arrows is not a bed of roses, or it's not a bed of soft cotton. It's a bed of iron fletchings and pincers, right? Sharp arrows which can take the life of people. So he's lying on that bed, which have gone into his body. All the blood has drained out of his body, and then he speaks. And how he says, in poem 6, Devvrat and the bed of arrows, he says, sunlit droplets, intrepid and impassioned, imprisoned and fettered in the sinewy cubicles. Sinewy cubicles means the blood is trapped into his body, right? It's trapped, of course. Just moving, it can't come out. Of my arteries and veins, over 1,000 years, thousands and thousands of years have come in the cycle of birth and birth. Right? We always believe in the mythology that 84 lakhs, right? Births can take place. So he says, so for thousands of years, this blood is imprisoned into my cubicles. And now they flow in abandon like the sail and the kite. On occasion, on oceans and space, no longer on the thread for aeons. No, it was trapped, but because of this battle and because of these arrows, this blood has flown out of those imprisoned. It was imprisoned, now it is free. It's flowing in freedom. On the pincers and fletchings, molded and sharpened of the ardent guilt, reddened, then sharpened, and edged, then parted, in the foundries of Hastinapur, right? So the carrier of blood of expansionist lust streaming from the wounds merrily over the shafts of arrows, arrows from the armory of Amaravati, the capital of Indra. So he just says that I am now on the bed of arrows, arrows which have been created to annihilate the enemy and expand our territories. I'm on those, and that is thereafter he speaks. And now coming to the other part, this is Bhishma. He's speaking. He's lost all the blood. He has no desire in his life. So what he speaks is pious words, right? As we say, the dying man doesn't tell a lie. So a very simple proverb. Madam, you have to tell me when I complete my time, right? I
Yeah,
shouldn't be
sure.
exceeding it. I'll be
Yes, sir.
taking just a short
Just
while, but
please
certainly important.
summarize.
Thank you so
We
much.
have one more speaker as well. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay, fine. So I'll quickly conclude another about say. Can you give me 5 minutes or less?
Sir, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Who is it's got 120 seconds. Now, you see, it also talks about the emperor, how an emperor is speaking to that man lying on the arrows. For him, for an emperor, for a person of justice, pain means nothing, right? Because otherwise, if he thinks pain has a meaning, then he can never sentence a person to death or to imprisonment. He is to rise above the level of pain and pleasure. So he gives a command. He gives a command, being an emperor, to another emperor who's lying on the bed of arrows, right? But he's no longer an emperor. He gives that command. He says, Maharaj Yudhishthira, the suitable king of Hastinapur. He says, I am the suitable king of Hastinapur. I have got that capability of being a king. I've won a war. And you're lying down there. You were an emperor. That's all right. But you're no longer one. So he gives him a command. He says, I am a king, the emperor of the two dhruvas, of the two directions. And two dhruvas and 4 directions, yet I know my elemental knowledge won't take me far. My 5 elemental knowledge, these books will not take me far. Therefore, I have to learn something from you, which you're giving me out of spirit. And one fine day, I shall fall as a withered leaf detached from the banyan, destined to be turned and consumed by molds. Yet I will also die one day and become consumed by the molds, right? And then he says that your Mahamahim, your knowledge will take me far. So please tell me. And then Bhishma starts. Then he says, just a few lines on poem 16 says, said the imperishable Bhishma, right? He says, here, O prince, from my fading metaphors, which still have adequate persuasion, befitting an emperor, which you verily are, for no one else shall have the possibility to draw itself so near as to have the audience of the emperor of Hastinapur. That nobody will come near you to tell you the right things. I am the only one, right? So, and then he starts, and thereafter he gives tells him about the divine vision of Narayan, and he personally feels that then he says, inscrutable to gods, na viduhu sura sultana. He says, even the gods don't know, right? We don't know where we have all come from. And he has realized that. So he says, know these names, pious and envisioned to the omniscient seers who treaded the fields of Aryavarta, focused on their inward eye with spirit and soul by contemplation, which they and they alone were trained and were capable of in their vision on the mental plane they discovered, right? And they sang in congregations. So it is only, he says, these were revealed to very, very few people on this planet. And I learned it from them, and I'm passing it on to you, right? And then he describes the beauty of that the God of the worlds. And one more thing which my book has, not in its praise, but by the points of information. For instance, there are certain things which I have written like, did you know, under the heading, did you know, right? Small snippets. When I take to page 14, did you know that another name of Lord Ganapati? I must say a very, very happy Ganesh Chaturthi to all of you. It's a very, very pious day today, and I've had the opportunity, great honor to present my book to all of you, that to professors, the libraries, to such a great university in this country, which I would call the founders and the managers and all professors as missionaries.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll read out quickly. Did you know that another name of Lord Ganapati is Pratham? He's called Pratham also. Since he is the first ever to be born by the union of the mother nature, the feminine Shakti, and Shiva, the Purush, which set the wheel of creation in motion. Right? This is one small point of information which I've given. Then I'll open page 67. That's all. Again, I don't know what's there on 67, but I must read it out to you. On page 67 is, I know I must be eating into the ancient man's time, but yes. Page 67 says, did you know that Shakti is basically the energy which emanates from the universe and has no limits or boundaries? Its different traits are represented by different arms and symbols and names as per region. Somebody calls it Durga, somebody calls it Kali, and there's a small picture. Every page has a picture. And I can promise that next time when my publisher would take out his print, we'll take it out in color so that you can distinguish between what is being conveyed by what. And
Beautiful, sir. Beautiful. Thank you so much, sir. With this, maybe we have to move on to next speaker of the day.
yes, I'm very grateful, Silky. You have allowed me to, because I've ended with my submission. I won't call it a
Thank you.
discourse.
Thank you
because
very
discourse
much.
to Bhishma Ji ka hai. And thanks for giving
Yes.
me this forum and time. Thank you so much.
Yes, your book reminds me very well of a very popular Sanskrit phrase, which is mentioned not only in Mahabharata, but also in Manusmriti. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. Dharma protects those who protect it. So it's a wonderful teaching from our ancient scriptures. And thank you so very much for this wonderful book. Now, moving on to the next speaker of the day, Mr. Jayant Bhatt, who very patiently waiting to share his thought. Mr. Jayant Bhatt is a counsel, teacher, and thought leader. He holds dual Masters of Law from New York University, USA, and National University of Singapore. He is a member of the prestigious Supreme Court Bar Association and Delhi High Court Bar Association. And his office caters to varied clients comprising of government as well as non-governmental bodies, multinationals, financial institutions, and individuals in an array of matters. Mr. Jayant, besides being practicing advocate, is also a prolific speaker at various platforms and is an individual with firm belief in greater societal good. We are so very happy and thankful to you, Mr. Jayant, for being with us. Over to you, sir, please.
Thank you so much. And first of all, happy Ganesh Chaturthi to everyone who is here. And also, I'm sorry to Dr. Ashish that his time had to be cut short on my account, and I'm sure that the university is also duty bound with their time limit, but I had nothing to do with it.
I think I've taken a little larger share of time. I'm sorry, Jain sir.
No, not a problem, sir. Not a problem at all. It was wonderful hearing about your book. In fact, I would want to order one from Amazon if it's already available there.
It's there. It's there.
I'll definitely order. And I heard the wonderful description that you had about the front page and the back page about the sunrise and the Vriksh. So that was in fact very illuminating. And as a child growing in India and watching Mahabharata as a prime time serial on Doordarshan, that is where my childhood memories really took me. When I think Bhishma Pitama, after the war of Mahabharata, was lying down, and this book club has launched this wonderful topic on leadership. So in fact, having heard three leaders previous to my speech, let me just quickly sum it up as to what my learning from the leadership speech in this 1 hour session has been.
Sure, we'd love to hear.
The first was by Mr. Nethani, who spoke of seagulls and how birds have this unique ability to fly and weather a storm. And that is one thing, and how they do, in fact, work wonderfully in a teamwork. Then Madam Momlot was there, who had also spoken about leadership in Sweden. In fact, I had the privilege to visit her country about 10 years ago. And I was visiting some friends and family who told me that the Swedish government is always encouraging that their population must go up. And because of that, what they do is, under the law, they have the norm of paternity benefits to both the father and the mother. And if you bear a child, then a 9-month holiday is given to you, which is completely paid and funded by the government. So you can have as many kids as you want, unlike in India, where we are, on the contrary, believe that we must have less kids because there is no welfare scheme by the government for the people. So that becomes a problem. So I don't know whether the government is lacking in leadership or the people want to produce more leaders to be part of the government in the future. So that is something that we have to realize and understand. And then, as I was hearing Dr. Vashisht, one Sanskrit shlok that he iterated and which was also reiterated by Professor Sharma is Dharmo Rakshitaha Rakshitaha, which means कि धर्म की रक्षा करने वाले की रक्षा धर्म करता है. And dharma has a wider meaning. Because as a lawyer, when I go to court, this is the logo which is embedded in the court, in the Delhi High Court. And when I go to Supreme Court, the logo which is inscribed there, which is again taken from Mahabharata, is Yato Dharmastato Jaya, means dharma ki hamesha jay hoti hai, aur dharma ka arth Shri Krishna se bhi liya gaya hai. So these are the two emblems which have been put in the courts of our country, the constitutional courts of our country. One is the Delhi High Court, and the other is the Supreme Court of India. The only thing which has always made me question the placement of these logos in the court is, why are they put behind the judges? It should be put in front of them. So they should be able to execute their dharma without fear and knowing that they're discharging their dharma. Because as lawyers, if I'm looking at these Sanskrit inscriptions in the court, I'm at least trying to perform my dharma. But if you are putting your back to the dharma, I think in a way it's a dharma, to my mind. But having said that, I think three speakers that I have briefly encapsulated. Let me not take much of your time. I'll try to wrap it up in the next 5 minutes. What is the meaning of leadership, and where do lawyers, especially we form a part of leadership as educators, as academicians? Where do we see ourselves in the leadership program? I think the first thing that we need to realize, and we need to believe in ourselves, is that all of us have that leadership trait within us. And when I say this, even a webinar by a book club, conducting and inviting speakers is a small step in the leadership direction. And why I say this is because the audience, the faculty members, the campus, the eminent speakers on the dais who have been presenting their case here have spoken one way or the other, either about the characters that they have dealt upon, be it Siegels, be it leadership thought in a foreign country, be it Devrat, who had taken a Bhishma Pratigya and was eventually lying on the bed of arrows, was also a leader, because a leader doesn't mean a king. A leader also means who will step away and perhaps give the right of kingship to the other. And that is the whole reason why Mahabharata took place, as Dr. Vashishta also pointed out. Because if I take a solemn vow today that I'll not do something, or I don't want to be the king, perhaps I can be the kingmaker. So leaderships come in different roles and sizes, and that is what we need to understand. So the students, if they're in the audience, you are the future leaders. Authors who are writing books are also leaders, because they are putting life into a character of a person, or a character lived through centuries, through folklore or through vernacular. Then the person who is trying to address the gathering, I would not say I'm a leader, but at least trying to instill that leadership trait in people, because leaders are made of people like you and me. It's not a God gift from heaven that a leader, is born. Even in our scriptures, if you see, most of the revered gods are the avatars of the universal gods themselves. So they have been sent to command leadership role in the country. And that is what we need to understand. Because every time a person is born as an avatar, they have to assume a role of a leader and command respect of the citizens, or of the people who are following them with respect and reverence. So that is also, what we need to realize. Now, as I go back to the court culture of lawyers and judges and everybody who's there, to ensure that the rule of justice, the rule of law is meted out and understood by the people at large, not just in India and but universally, we have a leadership role. We have a role, and I ask this question to myself every day when I get up: that am I acting as an impediment to the courts of justice, or am I being a facilitator to a courts of justice? I think that is very important. If I go to court, do I go to court to just perform verbose argument to look fancy, or do I go to court because I'm perhaps trying to go one step further and do some social good? Because there are two aspects to a lawyer's life. The one aspect is taking money from a client, representing them, because that is what a vocation is all about. You have to earn your bread and butter. The other role before the court is, once you have taken that money, well, that will go in your own well-being, buying a car, buying a house, giving salaries, etc. And that makes you a mini leader in your office by default, if not by design. But if you go to court and argue a matter, you have to understand that the jurisprudence that you help a court evolve or come into, and the logical deductions, either by arguing before a judge, trying to have a dialogue with the opponent. I don't see a reason of fighting with the opponent. You must always have a dialogue, because Shishtachar or Vyavhar Kushalta always dictates that a dialogue breeds deliberation, and deliberation breeds result. So to the audience here, especially the younger audience, I beseech upon you that leadership is a trait where I think humility is the first thumb rule, because a leader cannot be full of overconfidence or underconfidence. There has to be the right temperance of confidence in a person when they are trying to be leader. Every time you see a leader of any country, be it a prime minister or a president, depending on what type of governance they're propounding, they take the people along with them. So in fact, in a lighter zest, also let me put a pun here. I was watching the interview of one of the eminent lawyers. Let me not take the names here. And a comment was asked by a very renowned journalist about our current prime minister. And he said, "Do you think he's a great orator?" And the senior lawyer very quickly quipped, "I don't know if he's a great orator, but definitely he's a great manipulator." So as a leader has to know what is the difference between oration and manipulation. A person may attack you even as a leader that You may be the greatest orator, but you're manipulating the society. But a leader does not manipulate the society. A leader leads the society by their oration skills, by their actual skills, and by their leadership trait that, look, if I am doing this, why can you also not do this? We can all replicate good habits, good instincts from each other. Having said that, I think just to give you a few bullet points of, because it's a book club, there are a few books that I'm also reading. Some of them are fiction, some of them are non-fiction, some of them are about leadership. I'm sure there's a popular book you must have all heard of by James Clear called Atomic Habits. I read it about 2-3 months ago, in which he points out how simple habits done on a daily basis makes a good conduct and makes a good future leader ready. And it helps you build your own management in a good way. Then I was also fortunate enough to lay my hands on Indra Nooyi's book on her autobiography, in which she has in fact given 2 very wonderful narration of her life in India as a person coming from a middle class family, going to engineering college, then going to IIM. I think she was in IIM Calcutta, and then thereafter going to Yale and starting her life in America, and how she has made a mark in management throughout her years, and then retiring as the head of the CEO of the PepsiCo. Other book, there's another author I very keenly read and reread. His books is Ken Follett, and he's a great writer who writes a lot of fiction. And what I like about his fiction is that he creates different characters. And in different characters, you have a victim, you have a leader, you have a person who is trying to create some type of षड्यंत्र, so as to say. So, he has different bits and bobs of characters that he very cleverly weaves. And most of his books normally turns out to be of 1,000 pages, etc. So when I'm giving you example of these fictions and non-fiction, the idea is you can learn from anywhere. Leadership trait does not come by following one person or by a group of persons. It can come from anybody. It can come from a group of seagulls. It can come from foreign governance. It can come from Devrat. It can come from going to court. It can come from being a part of this book club. So having said that, I'll not extend my speech further because we have a paucity of time. But I would thank Amity University and especially this book club to have thought of me for this occasion. And I think I have bettered myself today by hearing 3 great speakers before me. And I have taken some more knowledge from them that I was not aware of initially. And as I say, every time you step towards your leadership goal, you have to realize that when we as Indians think of the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the world is our oyster, the world is like a family, we also have to think at a spiritual level, because eventually, if we consider Earth, as Dr. Vashisht was also saying, is a tender planet, the other parallel or other alternative would be that perhaps we are also a space machine. Perhaps we are a UFO traveling in the universe. It's very difficult to imagine the universe in its entirety. But considering that Earth is a spaceship, we must take good care of this spaceship by not being cruel to nature, to other sources of nature. That is very important. And as Dr. Vashisht has painted the Ganges River. As a child, I had the privilege to go to Gomukh, from where Bhagirathi emerges. And then you have Tapovan and other things. But as a kid, I could only trek to Gomukh. And all I can pray to this eminent panel and to the audience is, please do not take nature for granted. We have to be really aware of our surroundings. Corona taught us that. It was a very secular disease attacking all the nationalities, people of all walks of life in equal measure. So if you have learned something from Corona, is that let's not play with Mother Nature. Let's be a little more aware of our surroundings. There's a Sanskrit shloka, and I would pause my speech with that from Mahabharata and the Gita about the soul, which says, Nainam chindanti dakshani, nainam dhayati pavaka, na chainam kaledyanto yapo, na shoshati marutah, which means जो आत्मा है वो अजर और अमर है, उसको ना तो बाण भेज सकते हैं, ना उसको बौछार भिगा सकती है, ना आग जला सकती है. तो जो आत्मा की जो व्याख्या है श्री कृष्ण द्वारा इस श्लोक के माध्यम से जो अर्जुन को बताते हैं, so I think that is what we need to also make ourselves aware, instill these values in us, that leadership as a goal is more about the nurturing of soul, and not just your soul, the soul of the nature, the soul of the universe altogether. And again, my gratitude to the book club and to all the eminent speakers on the dais. Thank you again very much.
Great.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jayan, for such a wonderful session. And I must compliment you for great oratory skills and a great message with so many meaningful sentences if we can imbibe in our personal life and we can follow. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to the next session, felicitations. I would invite Dr. Rohtash Singh Ji to please take over. Over to you, sir, please.
Can I take a small second before that? Can I?
Sure, please.
I just received a message from the publisher of this book, Hymns. From the owner, the publisher of Anuradha Prakashan, the Dr. Saab. He's just told me that he's prepared to give a special discount to students on this book.
Wow,
So
great news, sir.
that may please be conveyed to the students.
Yes, sure, sir.
And Dr. Manmohan Sharma Sharan is the name of the publisher, and I shall share the telephone number of Dr. Saab with the Central Library here with Dr. Rohtash Singh Ji and Dr. Church. That can be conveyed, please.
Yes. Madam, due to paucity of time, we'll not be doing this felicitation. We'll be sending these certificates through by post. And
Sure.
let me say, propose the vote of thanks. So it is indeed a great pleasure to propose vote of thanks on the occasion of this book discussion talk by eminent author Ms. Katrina Malmarot and Professor Dr. Colonel Retired Arun Kumar Basist. The Asian Book Club is grateful to both the esteemed author. Thank you, Ms. Katrina, for joining us all the way from Sweden in absentia because she had to go. And to our very dynamic personality, Professor Dr. Arun Kumar Basista, sir. And we are also, grateful to learned guests, both are young, energetic, dynamic, and inspiration to the young minds. Sri Rajiv Nethani ji in absentia, he had to go because of some urgent work. And also Advocate Jayant Bhatt ji is very dear to us for accepting our invitation to speak to the students, faculty, and to other participants as well, and also sharing their valuable thoughts with us. We would also like to thank our learner director general, Professor Dr. Ajay Rana sir, for his continued guidance and motivation. And we would also like to thank our learned Dean Campus, Professor Brigadier Dhani sir, for all support all the time. He is all the time there to support us. Anil Kumar Chaudhary sir, who is Vice President Personnel and Registrar. Professor J.S. Justice sir, Dean Academics, who has been all the time behind us, and our HODs, faculty members, staff members, students, library colleagues, and of course Ismita madam, Silky ma'am, and Akanksha ma'am, and last but not the least to IT team. Thank you so much. May I request Dr. Rohtash ji, please, shall I ask to conclude the session, or you want to add something?
Sure, please continue.
Yeah, thank you so much, and please end the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, each one.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.